Welcome to A Few Thoughts About, the show where we dig into thinking and how it shapes our experience of life. Each week, I share insights and observations to get you thinking. No long lectures, just quick, thought-provoking episodes to shift perspectives so that you can make the change you want to make. Let's get into it. Hey, before we get started, I want to talk to you about something really exciting that I'm doing. So a couple of years ago, I started a program called Shift, and it was all about shifting your thinking. And it was content and group coaching, and we went through these ideas, and it was fantastic. Like, I completely loved it. And I've run it a few times since then, but I'm running into an issue. The way I see things has changed, and I want to run Shift with brand new content. I'm going to do it in a couple of months. So if you want to be on the list for when that opens, I want you to go to my website, scottpiniard.com/shiftinterest. The link is in the show notes. You can go there. You can get on the wait list. So when I do open this up, I will open it first to that wait list. So if you are interested in being there, if you took Shift before and think I want to do it again, or if you've wanted to do it, now's a great time. I'm going to do all new content, and it's going to be starting in just a couple of months. So scottpiniard.com/shiftinterest. Head on over there, sign up, and you'll be the first to find out when it's open. Okay, let's start the show. Well, hello there, and welcome to A Few Thoughts About Your Experience. So those of you who've been with me for a while, whether it's in one-on-one coaching or any of my groups or present and sober, you know that I'm really big into this idea of how our experience is created. And what I mean by that is this thing that you're living right now, right? This life, all of the stuff you see, all of the stuff you feel, like how is that being created? I have a little story to share with you about it because it was an interesting experience that literally just happened to me. I actually just got in from this walk and I thought I need to go record this because it was pretty impactful. So here we are in a March morning in Maine. It's about 40 degrees outside. It's foggy as hell. Living right on the coast here in Portland and being downtown, I'm pretty close to the water. Also, we've got a lot of snow that's melting. And so it's a sort of cool-ish, certainly not cold compared to where it has been, gray morning. And I had dropped my daughter off at school. And then I was downtown and, near my office. And usually I would just go in and, start working. And today I made a different decision because something felt different. And so I decided instead I'm going to get a cup of coffee and I'm going to go for a long walk. So I started doing this, and there was something about the weather that really started to remind me of how I used to feel when I lived in New York City. I lived in New York right out of college, and I was only there for a few years, but it was an absolutely transformative time in my life personally. Like, it really changed a lot. It was my first job out of school, but also just in terms of the way life felt. Anyway, when I moved to New York City, I moved to Astoria. So those of you who know the city know Astoria in Queens, right? It's not in Manhattan like skyscrapers and all that. It's more row houses. And I used to very regularly on the weekends just walk all over the place. Sometimes I'd take the train into Manhattan. Sometimes I'd walk around just in my own neighborhood. But there was a feel that we had weather that was so similar to this weather I was feeling this morning, right? It was like kind of foggy and it would be kind of damp and kind of cool. And all of a sudden, I got this idea in my head. I'm like, oh, I should listen to, there's a band I used to listen to way back then that I listened to that has a new album and I hadn't heard it yet. And I'm like, okay, what a perfect time. So there I am with my coffee, with my music, and I am walking. And walking is what I used to do a lot of in New York. And now all of a sudden, all of these experiences are flashing back into my mind, right? The experience of getting ready for work, the experience of riding a crowded train, I used to come into the city on the 7 train, and then I would take the 4-5 down to Grand Central. And being in Grand Central was just such an amazing thing. And just this feeling of being like way underground and in my dress clothes, because I worked on Fifth Avenue, and then walking up all of these steps and then coming out of the cramped sort of dingy feeling subway into this wide open space that is Grand Central Station, and just what that felt like. Suddenly I was feeling it again. Like suddenly I was like really actually feeling the way I felt. And I also started feeling the feelings of loneliness and sadness that I felt. Anyone, again, who's ever lived in New York City alone understands that it is quite a unique experience to be lonely in a city of 9 million people. It's a weird way to feel, to put it mildly. And I also started feeling the sort of joy and excitement and possibility that I used to feel then, right? So what was happening was I was completely lost in what I guess we would call a daydream, right? I was completely lost in remembering all of this stuff and listening to this music and feeling the environment I was in. And I was just creating this great sensory memory for myself. It was really great. It was really wonderful. The reason I bring this all up is that, in a way, like, this is what we're always doing. What was happening to me in the moment there was me creating a feeling, right? I was creating this. It wasn't that I actually traveled back in time, but I was using the power of thought, and I was feeling feelings because of the thoughts I was experiencing, and it was all familiar, and I started feeling it all again. And it dawned on me, like, this is exactly what we do all the time. It's what I'm doing right now, right? I'm living in my thinking. I'm feeling what's coming up from my thinking. It just so happens that right now my feeling is my thinking is focused on what I'm saying to you versus, going back in time 20 years. But that New York of 20 years ago doesn't exist anymore. That me that was in New York 20 years ago doesn't exist anymore. But I used thought to recreate all of it. And I bring this up to talk about the fact that this is the reality that we live in. We are constantly creating our experience through thought. We're bringing in information. That information is causing subconscious thought and conscious thought and emotion. And boom, there we go. There's experience. And when we start to see, wait a second, that's how it works, all of a sudden something changes. Like, I remember when I had the insight that, like, I was living completely in a moment of thought and just looking around and be like, oh my God, that's what's happening here, right? It's an incredible illusion. We have this incredible illusion that we're living in this world, and like these things outside of us are making us feel a certain way. And, we struggle with it, and, we fight and we try to improve conditions and all of this stuff. But when we start to recognize, hang on a second, it is always thinking that's creating my experience. It is always thinking that is creating the emotions I'm experiencing. All of a sudden, things feel different. And it's a very weird place to be, right? And you might be wondering, like, well, what does this have to do with alcohol? What does it have to do with change? Well, it actually has a lot to do with change. One of the things you've probably heard me say, if you've been around me for a long time, is this idea that the people who are the most successful, not just with quitting drinking, but quitting drinking and building the sort of experience they want to have, these are people that learn how to separate from their thinking. These are people that have that sort of realization that I was just talking about. And so when we have an experience like I had this morning, where all of a sudden I time traveled back 23 years to the fall of 2003, when I was listening to my iPod that actually had a mechanical wheel. You remember that, right? Like, I didn't have a smartphone. I had a flip phone, right? But anyway, there's a lot of differences, but like, I transported all the way back there. That only happened through thought. And the fact that I could feel that so strongly, like, that's amazing. That's incredible. I mean, just pausing to think about that is huge. But thinking about that in the context of quitting drinking is even bigger. because you are constantly having thoughts. Those thoughts are constantly creating your experience. And there are going to be times on this alcohol journey when that experience that you're thinking is creating feels like absolute shit, right? We've all been there. The cravings, the urges, the feeling of missing out, all of the above. When we recognize that what we're feeling in that moment is our thinking, not the world, well, then it's not the process of quitting drinking that's too hard. It's not the different things I'm trying to do to leave alcohol behind me that aren't working or are bad. It's just the thoughts we're feeling in the moment. And when we remember that, we can also remember the fact that just like clouds in the sky, they move on. Thinking is like weather. It's one of my favorite thought analogies out there. You know, that like over time, we just become so used to the fact or the idea that our experience is right in front of us all the time. We forget that like we go through moods. Like you've probably had this experience before. I know I have, where I wake up in like the foulest of foul moods, but then by 6 o'clock that evening, I am living in this incredible feeling of joy or happiness or contentment or whatever it might be. It is so easy for us to forget the weather that is our thinking. It is so easy for us to forget that we are creating our experience. But when we remember it in the middle of a crave or the middle of a particularly bad day, there's a sigh that we can let out. You know, earlier today, I was having these memories and, you know, it was partially nostalgic and it was partially thinking about how far I've come. You know, certainly I was very hungover every day back then. But thinking back to it was such a lovely experience. Like, how magical is that, right? There is no such thing as actual physical time travel, but I fucking did it this morning. I felt something that I hadn't felt in 23 years. And it's such a great reminder that every single one of us possess this ability to feel this stuff. And you can try it yourself. I mean, put yourself in a scenario, and you've probably done it before, where you're nostalgic, or maybe listen to an old album or go to an old neighborhood. All of those feelings start coming up. And if you want something to try, just to play around with this, and maybe you're listening to this and you're like, what the fuck has happened? Has Scott gone full hippie? And you know what? Maybe I have. I don't know. But if you want something to try, put yourself in that state. Don't take my word for it. Go create a scenario where you're, you know, in that place where you're thinking those thoughts, where you're feeling those feelings, and see what your experience looks like. And then ask yourself, what did I just do? Did I actually time travel? Or is there something else happening here? And I'm confident that if you spend time with this, you'll start to see, as I've seen and so many other people have seen, you'll start to see the very simple fact that we're always living in the feeling of our thinking. And when you see that, it starts to mean that thoughts like, I can't quit drinking, or this is too hard for me to go to this wedding and not drink, or anything else, you start to see those for what they are, which is the paintbrush that's painting your experience, not a hard fact. And you start to recognize the fact that these things will come and these things will go, and change is actually feels so much easier when you look at your thinking that way. Well, there you go. Those are a few thoughts about your experience. Tell me what you think about this. Like, this is, I got kind of deep on this one. I don't always do that. Maybe I'll do one that's a little more tactical next week, but I always love to hear from you. So go to scottpeniard.com/podcast. Send me a note. What did you think of this? How did this feel? I want to hear from you. And also, if you just want to say hi, it's also great. That's scottpeniard.com/podcast. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I'll be back again next week.